Okay, so we're going to jump into this, and we're actually going to fill out if I can get rid of this, we're going to find fill out a buyer's cost estimate. And as we fill one out, I'm going to go over the explanations, which I just gave you. So a lot of this stuff's going to be pretty basic, but there's going to be some stuff in there that will do some better explaining. So a lot of you guys know that I'm a former WooShock. So guess what? WooShock is going to buy this listing at 2503 South Yellowstone. The sales price on this, and please fill this out on your own form. That's why I gave you a blank one. We're going to go with 180,000. Okay. So you got to put the name of the buyers in, use both buyers' names, et cetera, et cetera. You guys know the drill on that. Property address, try to use the full address. Sales price, what are they offering? Pretty simple and basic. Type of mortgage. What you can use this line for is to determine whether or not it's conventional, FHA, VA, and the percentage they're putting down, like an 80-20 conventional loan, 80% mortgage, 20% down, et cetera, et cetera. So for this particular example, we're going to put in here 80-20 conventional. Estimated closing date. What I like to do is, if you look at your explanation there, if it's a cash deal, I usually go about 15-20 days out just to give my buyers time to do a mechanical inspection and for the title work to get completed. If it's conventional, I'll usually add 30 days. And I always explain to my buyer that there's times that we can close on or before the closing date. And FHA and VA, and ladies, please correct me if I'm wrong, you probably ought to give yourself 45 days on that just because of the appraisal status. Us having to wait on appraisals and all the hoops that we have to go through there. So just take a look at the closing date, add those days to it, or if your buyer has a specific date that they want to close on and it fits within those parameters, use that. So in this particular case, WooShock wants to close on the 14th, if I can get my mouse to work. So we're going to close on October 14th. Mortgage amount. One of each, Sharon, thank you. So I just said that this is an 80-20 loan. So what does that mean? They're putting 20% down. The mortgage amount is the loan amount, is another term for loan amount. So how would we figure this? Okay, but this is the actual mortgage amount. So you just described what the down payment is, right? Or take 180 times 80%. Either way, that's how you figure it up. So in this particular case, 180 times 80% is 144. So that is the mortgage amount. Is there going to be? Let me talk about this for a second. Sean and I had to have a special conversation about this particular line. We're going to advise you to leave it blank, and it's this. Like I said, this form is so antiquated. We're not quite sure exactly what the forms committee was trying to do when they put this line in here. I thought maybe it was because some lenders will wrap the MIP into it. So what our thought was is to go ahead and leave it blank or put a 0 in for now, because it's going to get covered in your monthly payments and your prepaids. So for the time being, we're just going to put 0 in there, or you can put NA. It won't let me put NA in. So, okay. The estimated interest rate, we're going to use 3 1/4. Term. So we always want to figure everything in months, not years. So if we're doing a 30-year mortgage, a 30-year loan, how many months is that? 360. If it's a 15-year, how many? 180. Okay. Principal and interest. A long time ago, someone special in this room with purple hair, I wonder who that might be, had shared with me, and I learned quite a bit from this, and I was using it quite a bit, where we used to be able to do, and you still can, what we call a price per thousand in order to figure up your principal and interest. And I went to her, last week or week before, and I said, where are you getting your updated rates? And she just looked at me kind of funny. She goes, use a mortgage calculator or use a mortgage app. So I talked to Shauna about it, and Shauna was like, I've heard of that before, but I just use a mortgage app. So on your free time, when you get a chance, go and do some research, find a mortgage app, you put the term in, the interest rate, the loan amount, and it'll calculate the principal and interest for you. If you have a real estate calculator, you can do the same thing with it. Put that in and so forth. So that's made our lives a lot easier in trying to figure that out. So based on what we have up here, the principal and interest for this particular loan is 626.7. Okay, now I didn't calculate it for you because you'll have a tool to do that for you. Mortgage insurance. Is there mortgage insurance on this? Why? Because they're putting 20% down. If it's anything less than 20%, there's going to be mortgage insurance. Just plan on it. Unless they've got some sort of funky type of loan that they're doing, just plan on doing that. If they're doing something strange, then keep in mind this whole thing, the whole premise behind this is we're putting this together in order for them to see what they have to have at closing and what their payments are going to be. So since this is an 80-20, we're going to put 0 there. General and special taxes. So what you'll do is you take the yearly general taxes and you add the specials to that, the yearly specials, add that up and divide it by 12. Real simple. The reason we're doing that is this is a monthly payment. That portion of their mortgage payment is going to escrow. And so we just take that amount and we add it up. So for this particular property, the taxes, the yearly tax is $1,871.09. Specials is $7.80. You add those two together, divided by 12, and that's going to give you this number, 156.57. Okay, whoever's on Zoom, if you would please mute, I would greatly appreciate that. Thank you. All right, hazard insurance. So I want to go around the room real quick. How are you guys calculating hazard insurance? Just throw some stuff out there. Guessing high. Okay. Okay. All right. Before, what I was using was a kind of a spread of numbers that Brenda and I had worked on together. I think we even did it for the class when we were putting the post-license class together. And after talking with Shauna about it, we kind of came up with a general rule of thumb to use so that you are getting a high number, but you're not going to short the buyer. You're going to, in other words, the hazard insurance is going to be kind of high, but it's going to cover. So the rule of thumb that you should use is if it's $90,000 or less, it's $900 a year. Even if it's a $40,000 or $50,000 piece of property, still use the $900 a year. If it's over 90,000, take the sales price times 1%. That would be your annual hazard insurance rate. Does that make sense? So you take, in this particular case, we're at 180,000. It's over 90, obviously. We're going to take that times 180,000 times 1% is $1,800. Since we're figuring up the estimated monthly payment, we'll divide that by 12. That's going to give us $150 per month. You guys see how I came up with that? Saw her first. Sorry.
A lot of times that's credit driven. That's really
yep.
So if they've got easy credit, just prepare them for it.
Thank you, Cheryl, for adding that. And it really depends on the type of property. It depends on the type of home or the like Cheryl said, the buyer, where it's located, and the insurance company, who the insurance agent is. I had a nephew just closed on a house this past week, and he went through he got some insurance through one agent, and then he reached out to his parents' agent and saved him $50 a month on it. So it really depends on who you're using. The idea behind this is we want to shoot the number high so that when it comes in lower, they're going to be happier. Chris.
Just to make sure I got it right. 190,000, you said
900 a year. 900 a year. Yeah. So then if that was the case, you take 900 and divide it by 12. So I want to make sure everybody understands what we're working on. We're doing the estimated monthly payment. This is what their monthly payment's going to be, not their closing costs. Flood insurance. when it comes to flood insurance, Sean and I kind of looked at each other, kind of rolled our eyes and said, if you're getting into a situation of flood insurance, you might want to try to get a hold of the buyer's insurance company, their insurance agent. Does anyone here in the room have any rule of thumbs? Like I've been asking around.
It can be comparable.
Okay. So,
It can be comparable to the same price.
and that would probably be a safe bet because, Sandra and I were talking about it. She had a property where only a portion of the lot was in a flood zone and it had a storage unit or a stick-built storage unit on it. And they were paying like $600 a year. So $50 a month for the flood insurance. So it's variable.
If there's flood insurance on the property currently,
Mm-hmm.
I always ask the sellers what they're paying. Or ask the sellers agent.
Right, the listing agent. That's a great point.
Because then you have some idea. USAA has a thing sometimes where it is, if the actual property isn't in the floodplain, or the dwelling isn't in the floodplain, and it's just outbuildings, fund,
Right.
then that's transferable to anybody else who takes the property, but it is so variable
Yeah.
that usually I talk to the seller's agent, just ask them what they're paying for that. And then try desperately to talk my people out of buying the house.
And well, right. And I like both ideas. If you can get a hold of the listing agent and find out, that's great. Use that number. Otherwise, I'm probably going to follow what Cheryl said. Just use what the hazard insurance is and hope for the best on that.
I have somebody in a flood zone right now. I just looked up their flood quote and it was pretty much the same as their hazard.
Okay. Ray, you had a question?
Actually, question, comment, that is not optional, is that correct?
Correct.
Any floodplain is required by the insurance.
Yeah, but keep in mind, guys, I want to clear something up because I've heard this conversation in the office, rabbit ears. And that is, if you look at an MLS listing and it says unknown, that does not mean they have flood insurance or they do not have flood insurance. That's not what that means. I can't even talk. It's not what that means is the seller currently isn't paying flood insurance. I did it was 2 or 3 years ago. A fellow board of directors member, I went and showed his property. We noticed that it was, I can't remember the name of the subdivision. It's over on Maple, just west of 119th, where the big blue roof is. No, not quite Rainbow Lake, south of there. But anyway, we noticed in the basement that there was a stain all the way around the bottom, about 4 or 5 inches up. So I called the listing agent and I looked at the listing and it said unknown. And I said, hey, you've got this listed as unknown. And he goes, oh, you know what? He goes, I probably need to disclose that it's in a flood zone. And I'm like, well, as buyers, that's our responsibility. But what the deal was is the sellers weren't paying flood insurance because they outright owned the house. They didn't have a mortgage on it. They didn't have a loan. They outright owned it. And this was like a $250,000 home. And so they outright owned it. They didn't have to pay it. They chose not to, apparently. So just because you see it as unknown in the MLS does not mean it is not in a flood zone.
And to answer to your question, if you have a mortgage that is backed on the secondary mortgage market, so if it's Fannie, Freddie, any of those, you have to have it. If it's a portfolio loan for a local bank or something, they may or may not require.
Yep. So we're going to go in. Thank you, Brenda. We add all these up. That's your total estimated monthly payment. And what I always like to do is when I put this together, I like to ask the buyer, are you comfortable making this payment? Because just because you're approved to purchase $180,000 does not necessarily mean that they're going to be comfortable making those payments. That's what got us in trouble back in 2007. Any questions on that? Okay, moving through. So if you use the buyer's cost estimate, and for this form, for those of you who don't know, you can find this in our Instanet, and it will automatically calculate everything for you. So when you put in 180,000 and so forth, it should calculate that your initial investment or the down payment is 36,000. That's this number right here. So we got to show them that's what your down payment's going to be is 36,000. Now we're going to go get into the actual estimated loan and closing costs. We're going to first talk about loan origination fee and discount points. Sean and I probably spent a good 15 minutes talking about this particular line item. What we have decided is, and what we're advising you guys to do is do not concern yourself with the loan origination fees. We're going to throw that down at another line item lower in the list. It'll be included in the underwriting or document prep fee. A buyer can pay down or pay discount points. You guys know what discount points are? They can pay like a 0.5% or 1/4% to get their interest rate to come down. If the buyer has that information or if you see it in a pre-qualification or pre-approval letter, then go ahead and add it. Shauna, do you want to speak a little bit about what your thoughts were? You shared with me that if it's more than 1/4%, it's probably not worth it.
Yeah, it just, if they buy down their rate like an eighth of a point, it only lowers their payment like $11 maybe. So that's why I was like, I'm just not a point charger. I don't think Adrian is either. We both kind of just do what the available rate is. Is that kind of your thought?
It is. The only time I ever really get into discounts is if that's really.
Do you guys see buyers who know that they're not going to be in the house for a long period of time buy down the interest rate with discount points?
So then to me, that would make it even more not worth it because I usually calculate it out.
Okay.
How long it takes for them to even recoup that. So.
They'd be better doing like 5 year.
Right. Okay.
So that's why I was like, to me, that line item is just if they're buying down the rate, which would just be specific to their transaction versus the
Okay.
general cost.
And see, I had been told the opposite from someone else, and so I included. Just scratch that off your explanation list.
My style, her style is that it was not point charging.
So if there were a point, then you would take the loan amount times, in this case, let's say a 1/4%. You would take the loan amount times 0.0025. And then you would put that figure in. But in this particular case, WooShock is not buying any points down, so that'll be a 0. Credit report. There's been a number of different ways to figure out the credit report. Sean and I just kind of basically decided that the best way to go on that is just do a $50 flat fee. At one point, it was $50 per person if it was like a married couple. But after discussing with her, she said flat rate of $50 would do the trick. Again, keep in mind, guys, these are just general numbers that we're giving to the buyer. Appraisal fee on average, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just a quick back and forth. I know that you had made inquiries to the forms committee about updating.
Mm-hmm.
You know if they're going to separate loan origination fee like discount point because that is kind of.
It is two completely different items, and I don't know if the forms committee is even going to take it up. I personally sent the request to the forms committee asking them to update this form because there's a couple other line items on here and a couple things missing, in my opinion, that need to be added. And I pointed that out in my email to them as this is why we should be looking at making this change. That's one of them, separating the loan origination fee away from the discount points.
And just to confuse it a little more on your closing disclosure, underwriting, processing, all that's going to show up on the closing disclosure. As an origination fee.
Yeah.
That's why I was like, I don't like that those flow
Right.
together because to us, it's underwriting.
It's outdated.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're going to see we're going to get to the mortgage registration tax, and we don't even do that anymore. So, and it's still on this form. So, good point, Chris. Thank you. Credit reports 50. Appraisal fee on average. We feel that the $600 is a good number to use. Oops. So on the average, appraisal fees will be $600. Reinspection fee. I would advise you to just leave this at 0. For the most part, I've never put a reinspection fee in it. Basically, what that is for is if the property, if the appraisal is subject to any repairs like FHA, and the buyer has to pay to have it, the appraiser come back out to reinspect those repairs, it's going to be about $125. So you might just make a little side note. It'll be in your cheat sheet that I give you. If they have to come back out, it's $125. But at this time that you're writing this up with your buyer before you submit the offer, you're not going to know. So just leave it as 0. Leave it as 0. Title insurance. Are you guys aware that Security First has raised their rates? If you're not aware, make sure before you leave today that you get an updated rate card from Bailey or Kathy upstairs. Simply put, on this one, you take the title insurance rate that you see on the rate card and divide it by 2. Why are we splitting it? Each side pays half. That's in our actual purchase contract that it gets split. So if you look at the rate card for a $180,000 home, it's $900 for the total. So what's the buyer's half going to be? $450. Sorry, I don't mean to treat you guys like you don't know your math. This is the way I teach. Sorry. Lender's coverage. Can anybody tell me what the actual lender's coverage is? It's 200 now, but what is it?
Covers the lender against title conditions.
Correct. The definition I have is basically title insurance on the loan for the lender. That's all you need to know. That's how you can explain it to your buyer, that because the lender has interest in the property, they want to make sure that there's coverage on the title. Okay, so that's always going to be $200. Lender's coverage. Did I put that in the right place? Lender's coverage. Okay. Mortgage registration tax. We do not do this anymore. It used to be 0.0018 times loan amount. We don't use it anymore. Now what's going on is we're going to cover it in the recording fee because they charge by page. And I'm going to explain that here in a minute. So mortgage registration tax, that no longer exists. This is another change that I've asked the forms committee to look at, to remove this and do something just to get rid of it. So always, always, always put 0 there. Recording fee. This is for the recording of the mortgage. It's based on per page of the mortgage and the transfer deed. And the general average that Sean and I talked about, it would be $350. So it might be a little bit more if they've got a, how would you explain it?
They have riders, like if
Right.
HUD or several borrowers, things like that.
It can go up. But on the average, we want you, and we're advising you to use $350 on that. A survey usually is not required. A lender doesn't usually require that. If you have a buyer that's purchasing some acreage, maybe it's 12.636 acres east of Derby or whatever, and they want to make sure that the corners are marked on the average, we're thinking that it's about $750 for a survey. In this particular case, this property is in a subdivision and Wooshock doesn't care about it. So I ask my buyers about it if they want to get one. If they say no, I just put 0. But if they want one, make a side note, it's usually $750. Okay, this is the one line item that always gets me. I hate figuring this one up. And I was so glad that Sean and I were able to meet and go over this. And this is the underwriting or document prep fee. What I've done on my own personal form is that I've moved the loan origination fee in with this line. So we had a lengthy discussion about it. And on the average, we're advising you to use $1,200. On the average, just use $1,200 despite the loan amount. Just figure that in there at $1,200. That way there's no second guessing. There's not, I wonder what they're going to charge. Every lender is going to charge different. Some lenders are going to be more, some lenders are going to be less. And we felt that $1,200 was a fair number to use. So moving forward, when you see this, don't sweat it. I always was like, I wonder what they're going to be charging. What does Meritrust do, or what does so-and-so do? Just use the $1,200 number.
And on our estimates, we all pretty much split in between doc prep and underwriting, and then it flows up to a loan origination charge. So you'll just know there's going to be split out on ours.
Yep. Adrian, do you want to add anything to that? Okay, perfect. Any questions on that line? Closing fee, obviously with the rate cards going up, the title insurance going up, So do the cost of closing. Now they are $320 to do a closing with Security First. So per the purchase contract, we split that cost with the seller. What's our amount going to be? $260. So no longer is it $245, it is now $260. $520. I'm sorry, did I say, yeah, $520. My apologies. Did I put that wrong in there?
No, you got it right.
Oh,
You said it was 300.
360. I'm sorry. Yeah. Termite inspection. It's been a long time since I've come across the situation where the buyer has to pay for their own termite inspection because they usually get included with the mechanical inspection. So not knowing exactly kind of the direction they're going, I always usually put 0 in there because, and I explained to them, most of the time, if you get a mechanical inspection, they're going to include the termite. If you aren't going to get a term or mechanical inspection, then you can plan on anything on a price of anywhere from $50 to $75, depending on who you use to do a termite inspection. Everybody okay with that? Everybody understand where I'm coming from on that? So for the most part, we're going to put 0 in there because it will be included in the mechanical inspection. If not, I would put 75. Tax service fee. This is, and you want to write this down. It's obviously in your notes. This is the third-party verification of taxes, and it's a $78 fee. That's static. Means it doesn't change. We talked about it, and then I went and talked to Kathy Rogers about it, and she said just use $78. $78 is good. Okay, so that's 78. Well, sewage system inspections. If one of the things I want to point out is if your buyer is purchasing a home that has a well, a septic, or a lagoon, you need to use the addendum that comes that's in Instinet that calls out who is paying for what. It doesn't matter whether or not the inspection is required or not. Okay, and what I mean by that, if it is in the city of Wichita, they're going to have what they call a title transfer inspection. That's their special name for it. In other words, it's a well or septic inspection, whatever you want to call it. And it used to be in the past that the seller was supposed to pay for that. If you're buying something out in Sedgwick County, the seller doesn't really need to pay for that because it's not required. So you have to have that conversation with your buyer as to whether or not they want to have this inspected, which I would always advise them to have it done. And if so, you need to fill that addendum out, spelling out that your buyer is going to pay for it. So last I checked, which was about a month ago, a well inspection for the city of Wichita was $125 for an irrigation well, and it was $250 for a drinking well because they got to sample the water, they got to test the water. Does anyone know what the county or the city's charging for septics and lagoons? 150. So write that down somewhere. 150 for septic or lagoons. If your buyers want to have one done and it's not in the city of Wichita, and keep in mind, the city of Wichita, if it's an irrigation well, they're not going to test it. In other words, they're not going to fire it up and see if it's running. All they're going to do is come out and make sure the wellhead meets code. That's it. And you have to have that conversation with your buyers because just because they come out and look at it doesn't mean the thing works. The pump may be dead down there in the well. So it's not a bad idea for your buyers to go ahead and pay to have an inspection done by a well company or septic company, et cetera, et cetera. Yes. Yeah, and I think a lot of title companies won't let you even close. I know Kathy's she's come to marching into my office before saying so-and-so's buyer or so-and-so hasn't got the well inspection to me yet. We can't really close on this. So does that make sense? If it's in the city of Wichita, it's got to be done. If it's outside the city, it's up to your buyers to have it done. Okay. In this particular case, what did I use for my example? There is a well on the property. WUSHOC wants to have it inspected just to make sure it works. We're going to put in here 125. Flood certification. Basically, this is a static or a one rate. It's $20. That is not to be paid if, why doesn't it fill out correctly? See, this is another reason why the forms committee needs to get off there. Because the form's not right. Flood certification, you do not use this on cash offers. This is something for the lender. The lender wants to make sure that there's a flood cert on it, that it's good to go. Any questions on that? Am I going fast enough for you guys? Next one, home warranty plan. You guys all know that we have different types of plans out there that your buyers can use. They can range anywhere from $400 to $800. It all depends on the type of loan or the type of offer you and your buyers are writing, whether or not you want to ask the seller to pay for it, if the buyer wants to pay for it, whatever the case may be, there's a line item there for it. If they choose to get one, you would put that number in. Where do you find that number? The brochure is upstairs. There's all the different home warranty companies up there. You can pull those flyers out, and it's got the rates in there. In this particular case, WooShock's not buying one because the seller has already provided it. So we'll put 0 in there. Property inspections. Now, this is one of the items that I think needs to be removed from this column because in my humble opinion, this is not a loan cost. A property inspection should be completely separate. That's one of the things I brought up to the forms committee. Why is this in here? The other point is, when are mechanical inspections paid for? At time of service. Your buyers are already, they're cutting a check to the inspector right then and there. We still need to show it as an expense, but we also should show it as a credit at the end of this. And that's one of the biggest issues I have with our estimated form here from the association. There are no places on here to show a credit like the big one, Earnest Money. There's no place on here to show that they've already paid $1,000 or $2,000 towards Earnest Money. Does that make sense? So if WooShock goes out and spends $450 on a mechanical inspection, I want to be able to explain to him, okay, you'll pay for that at the time of the inspection, okay? But I'm going to show it here, but then I'm going to show you a credit at closing because you've already paid for that. Yes. You can, and that's a great point. No, because you want to be able to show the buyer where that earnest money went. You want to show them, okay, you paid the $2,000 in earnest money. I want to, where's it? Where do I see it on here? Okay, I would keep it separate because the initial investment or down payment is just that. That's the down payment for the loan. That $2,000 can be applied towards closing costs, prepaids. It's whatever. That's why I would like for the forms committee to look at that and add as some credits at the bottom. Yeah. Good. Yep. Right.
But showing credit for all the earnest money, whatever, in one place, showing the credit all in one place versus kind of scattered.
Yeah. So in this particular case, WooShock's getting a inspection done, and it's $400. If there are any other stuff that's going on that needs to be added, you can put it in here. That's another one of those lines I'd like to see them take out. So we're going to put 0 there. So the total estimated loan cost is going to be $3,733. If you take a look at the purchase contract on the first page, line number 22, it says buyer agrees to pay a loan closing cost discount points an approximate amount of. I take that number right there, and that's what I put in. And now sometimes I'll round it up, I'll round it down. In this case, I'd probably put $3,750. If you've got a buyer who is what I caringly say cash poor, they have enough for their down payment, but not enough for their closing costs. We need to figure out, okay, how much closing costs do we need to ask the seller to pay for? I'm going to use that number, $3,733, and I'll add that to the prepaids that we come up with. And that's, okay, this is how much we need to ask for. Is this what you want to do? Okay. Any questions on that part? This is fun. It's math. It's me. Me and my math. Okay, hazard insurance. So now what we're doing is we're getting into prepaids, reserves, and prorated costs. And before I get into that, I don't think I hit this hard enough. Kansas real estate laws require us as realtors to do this with our buyers before writing an offer. Did you guys know that? It also states that in our purchase contract that you have gone over these costs with your buyer. In a roundabout way, it says that. And third, Greg's not here, so I'll say it. He's not the most important part of it, but third, your broker requires it. So you are required to do this before you write an offer. And by having this done, you have the numbers in front of you, and it makes it so much easier to fill out the purchase contract because now you've got everything right in front of you. Talking with both Shauna and Adrian, I am shocked at how many times that agents will write up an offer and they're just taking a shotgun effect to the closing costs and prepaid items. They're signing a purchase contract, and then they're going to the lender after the fact asking for an estimated net because they didn't know how to fill this out or they were too lazy to do it. That's a no-no. Adrian asked me today about it. Will they check? Because a lot of our estimated nets actually have the dates on them. So if I sign a contract, if Wooshock signs a contract today, and then I go to Adrian tomorrow and say, hey, by the way, I need an estimated net, I'm going back to Wooshock and say, okay, post date it yesterday. Okay, that's a no-no. We're not supposed to be doing that. I don't know if KREC would find something like that or not if that file were to get audited, but I know I don't want my wrist slapped. So this is the main reason why we're doing this is so that you have this tool in hand to be able to effectively do this without getting yourself in trouble. Yes. Yes.
At the old compliance officer, you're supposed to do this before the buyer writes the offer, right? When you're on the other side, this is the thing that makes sellers net worth. The one you do at the listing is great, but that's not the real one. You need to do a seller's net with the offered price before they sign the contract, just like you do this before.
Right. It is required, and a lot of times, especially in post-license class with newer agents, I'm always constantly asked, are we required to do a seller net estimate at the time of listing? Legally, no, you do not have to. But business-wise, why wouldn't you? If you're doing a listing presentation, you're sitting down with the seller and you're competing against other realtors, why wouldn't you want to show them what their estimated net is? As a listing agent, I would want to know what the estimated net is in case they're upside down on their mortgage. Are they going to have to bring money to the table at this list price? Okay, so Chris is absolutely right. You must do both of these at the time an offer is written or reviewed to the seller. But when it comes to listing, you don't have to, but you might as well. And I think Greg, I think we kind of require it here, don't we? Those in compliance, then Greg wants that, right? I mean, I always do it, so I don't know.
Yeah, we love to see it at the listing. We get crunchy when we don't see one from the offer.
Yep.
That's really the important.
Right. Okay, any questions on that? I'm trying to stress the importance on this. We're almost, no, that's good, that's good. Okay, so now we're talking about the estimated prepaids, reserves, and prorated costs. Hazard insurance, 1 year plus X number of months reserve. Sean and I talked about this, and I had been using 3 months reserve, so I was always doing 15. She said, just do 2 months. 2 months. That's about the average. It's about what everyone does. So we're going to put in here 2 months reserve. Now, how do we go about calculating this? You're going to take the yearly insurance, divide that by 12, and then take that times 14 months. So we would take, or you can take the monthly insurance up at the top if you want to make it easy on you. Take this monthly mortgage hazard insurance right here and take that times 14. That's okay. So what would that number be? 2,100. Does everyone understand that? Okay. What did I put? Oh, I did it right. It's 2,100. You take hazard insurance of $150 a month times 14 months.
Oh, sorry, I went down. Brain fart.
Like, I went back and double checked my numbers just to make sure that I wouldn't screw up. Okay, so we're going to basically use the same parameters for flood insurance. So whatever you came up with your monthly amount, we're going to use 2 months in reserve, so it'll be 14 months. But in this case, there is no flood insurance, so we're going to put 0 there and 0 here. Mortgage insurance. Don't worry about this line. It's typically not used. So just leave it blank. Don't even worry about it. It's 0 and 0. MIP or VA funding fee. I'm going to come back to this in a little bit. Do we have, I will ask this, do we have an MIP or VA funding fee on this one? Not on this one, why? It's conventional for 1, and 2, it's greater than 80/20. So it's going to be 0 and 0. Generals and special taxes. Just like hazard insurance, you should use 14 months. So we're going to put in here 12 general tax. I'm sorry, did I do that right? I'm sorry, 2 months, two months reserve. So we're going to do 2 months in reserve. You guys understand where that money goes, where the hazard insurance goes. You know how to explain that to your buyers. For those of you who are not shaking your head, basically all these items here are going into the buyer's escrow account with the lender. That builds the escrow account. It starts it out. And that way the lender can immediately start making those payments on for the buyer's taxes and their hazard insurance. I always like to joke around by saying this is the lender's way of telling you they don't trust you in paying your own taxes and insurance. So you got to pay for it. And they want at least 2 months in reserve. So what you do to figure this up is you take the monthly general taxes and the monthly specials, add them together times 2. Okay, does that make sense? Or you can simply just go up here and look at the general special taxes, the monthly amount right there, and you take that times 2. Does that make sense? Pretty simple and easy. So in this particular case, the way I calculated it, it came out to be $313.15. So that's the number I'm going to use. Homeowners Association initiation fee. Please, please, please double check the MLS. Those are, I believe, are required fields. And hopefully the listing agent did their due diligence and found out whether or not there's an HOA. It doesn't always happen, but there's 2 fields in the MLS, initiation fee and then the yearly amount. On this particular listing that's actually out there, the initiation fee was $150. So we're going to put $150 that goes in there because the buyer has to buy into the initiation fee. Homeowners Association proration. So way I calculate it, and I've not had anybody really correct me on this, is you figure the HOA from annually. So January 1st through December 31st, just figure it based on that. Some HOAs may be different. They may do it in June. They may, who knows when they do it. But you got to think about it. If we have a closing date of October 14th, has the seller not been in that HOA from January 1st through the 14th? But what has the seller paid for? The seller's already paid for the entire year. Okay, do you guys follow me? The seller's already paid for it. Now here comes Wooshock along and he closes on the house on the 14th. Is it not Wooshock's responsibility to pay for the HOA for the remaining part of the year? That will show as a credit to the seller. So we have to figure out what that proration is. So in this particular example, the dues per year was $240 a year. So this is how you calculate it. You take 240 and divide that by 360 days in a year. Okay. Now you got to figure out how many days are left in the year. So let's think about it. Here we are. We're closing in October. We have November, December. That's 30, 60. There's 60 days. Then we're closing on the 14th. So that's how many days left in the month? 16 days. So 60 and 16 is 76 days. You take 76 days times the daily amount, and you should come up with $50.66. Does that make sense? You guys see how I figured that? And it's right there in your explanation. Any questions on that? So it's just simple, basic stuff. Prepaid interest. Talking with other peers, got into a conversation with someone down at the board, another broker, and I don't know how we got onto this prepaid interest conversation. I think we were talking about the form or whatever. And he had made the comment to me that a lot of his agents don't even put a number in here for this. And I said, well, that's just the fact of them not knowing how to calculate it. And there are a number of different ways it can be figured out. Shauna had a different way, and I had my way. And so we compared our numbers and they came out the same. So I'm going to share with you how I figure it out. And I know Brenda does it this way and Cheryl probably does it this way because when we were together on the committee building our post-license class, we had to go through all this. So this is how you go about figuring it out. You take the loan amount times the interest rate. So in this particular case, it's going to be 144,000 times 3.25%, and you divide that by 360 days. That is going to give you your per day rate. So over here, that just told us it's $13 per day. That's not rounded out. That's exactly how it came out. It's $13. It's amazing how that came out. So now you have to be able to explain to your buyer that the mortgage is paid in arrears. Okay. So when they pay on October 1st, they're actually paying for the month of September. Okay. Okay. What is it that you like to say? You pay, then you said it the other day. You stay, then you pay. Yeah. So what ends up happening is, and you have to be able to explain this to your buyers, that this amount here pays for the remaining amount of the month, pays for the rest of October. Did they live in the house through the month of November? See, right? October, November, and then their first payment's not until December 1st. Does that make sense? Okay, just making sure. So we now know that what's $13 per day because we took the loan amount times the interest rate, divided that by 360 days. How many number of days are left in the month from with the closing date of October 16th or September 16th? Basically, if you want to use an actual calendar, probably, but use a 360 calendar, you're not going to be that far off. So 30 days less 14 is 16 days. So we're going to put in here 16 days. 16 days at $13 per day is how much? 208. You just figured up their prepaid interest. It's really simple. If you just think about it and have a cheat sheet there with you or whatever, you just take the loan amount times interest rate, divide by 360 times the number of days left in the month. Sometimes I will, when I go over this with my buyers, they'll say, so it's less for me to close it later in the month? Yeah. You know, so. Any questions on that? You can use, again, other for whatever you need. Just make sure you put a 0 over there. And then that comes up with your total estimated prepaids, reserves, prorated items, and so forth. Any questions on that? Okay, the last thing is,
I do have one question.
shoot.
So going back to the beginning, you take 2021, that says 28, 21.
Where are you at? Right here? Yep.
Yeah, 20, 21.
Mhm.
The number just above it, sitting right now, the 37, 33.
Yep, these two numbers right here.
Together, and that's what you would ask.
Correct. You guys know what he's referring to? So if your seller, or excuse me, your buyer needs help in closing costs, you would take those two numbers and add them up. That's what, 6,500. I'd probably, that's what I would put in the contract. Seller agrees to pay up to not to exceed $6,500 in buyer's loan costs, prepaid costs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, however you want to write that out. And just because if the seller or the buyer has some money to use, like they say, well, I can pay $4,000. Okay, great. Let's put the $4,000 on the purchase contract, but the remaining balance needs to go in the miscellaneous, if that makes sense. So in this case, it would be $2,500. Okay. On this particular number here, that would go in on line 23 of the purchase, where it says buyer agrees to pay prepaid items in approximate amount of. That's the number you would use. See how it makes filling out the contract so much easier when we got it calculated. Okay. So finally, what we do, the last thing that we do is we go up here and we take the down payment of $36,000. We add in the loan costs of $37.33. We add in the prepaid amounts of $28.21. We add them up, and whoosh, this is about how much money you'll need to have at closing. Now, what I will do if I'm using this form, I will write in here less earnest money, and I will put in parentheses. I'll write in there $2,000, and then I'll write a new amount would be $40,554. Plus the credit for the appraisal, credit for the mechanical inspection, because they paid for that in advance. Okay, does that make sense? Yes. So if my seller, well, I do. It depends on if I'm using this form or my own. But if I were to use this form, I would show it as a credit. Yes. And this is why, since there's no play, this is what I was saying, that this form is missing some items. That's the big part that I feel our form is missing. Where do you show any credits? Because the buyer gets credits. Just because they're buying a house doesn't mean they're laying out all the cash. There is some credits coming back to them. Okay. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Got the credits, even if it's tax proration and things like that. They were like, oh, shoot, so I don't have to bring all of that. No, you got to bring your credits back in too, but it doesn't show it.
Right. Yep. Any other? Yes.
When we're calculating that prepaid interest.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in this example, they're closing October 16th and their first mortgage payment is probably not going to be due till
November 1st. Mm-hmm.
November 1st or December 1st?
Let's see, pay it. Let's see, September. I'll close in October. Yeah, December 1st.
So I guess my question, I want to make sure I understand, why is it that we're only calculating the partial month of October and not also calculating it for November? Since they're not making their first payment until December?
Do you want to answer that? Or you want me to answer?
The December 1st pays November.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Pay in arrears. Okay. The last thing I want to do, I know it's 2:00. Thank you, sir. I'll stop this. Is thank you. I want to go in and I want you, if you need another form, a blank one, come up and get them. But I'm just going to make a few changes to this so you can see some other areas that need to be calculated. So we're now going to change things up. Now that we've got that done, we're going to go back up here, and now we're going to do, and ladies, don't shoot me. I just was shooting off the hip when I did this. Now we're going to do a 97.3 FHA loan. Oops. I know, but I was like, I don't want to make it any more confusing. God bless it.
I do want to ask, can I ask one question?
Absolutely.
When you're filling these out, or if you have filled them out, do customers ask you what is the difference between a low cost and a rebate?
Mm-hmm.
You know how to explain that? The easiest way I found to do it is a loan cost is a fixed fee, a one-time fee that you pay. A prepaid, you pay every day. You pay taxes every day. You pay homeowner's insurance every day. If you got a mortgage, you pay interest every day. So those are the differences.
I explained them that prepaids are actually still your money, they're just going into.
Yeah, that's and that's how I explain it. I tell them that that money is going into an escrow account. So, okay, I'm going to make this very quick, and then I'm going to give you guys cheat sheets. Do you want a cheat sheet? I didn't hand them. I didn't. Okay. Okay, so what we're gonna do is real quickly, I'm only gonna make the changes to the form based on doing an FHA loan. Okay, so we're at 97.3 FHA. I know it's supposed to be 3.5, but I wanted to make it easy. Okay, don't shoot. Don't. Yeah, it is 3.5, but I'm doing 3 just because I want to make it easy. That's right. This is the type of loan. This is the type of lender that got us in trouble in 2007. Yeah. Yeah. I'll show you how it figures it out. So we got to figure out the mortgage amount. So now we're going to take 180,000 and take it times what? 97% or 96.5 if it's 3.5. So we're going to make this 174.6. Oops. Yeah, that's right. Now, if you come down here and look, it automatically updated this number. Your down payment changed to 5,400. Okay. The interest rate stays the same. The term stays the same. You're going to go in and recalculate the principal and interest. That goes up to 759. Oops. Fat fingers. Okay. The generals, hazard insurance, all that stays the same, but what else changes? How about the mortgage insurance? You got to add that mortgage insurance. So what we're going to do on this, and I want you to write this down, is you take the loan amount times 0.007. And I have it in your explanation, and it'll also be in your cheat sheet that I'm going to give you.
Use the 0.007 as a conventional average.
Okay.
FHA does have the fixed monthly.
It's
0.85. That's good to know. So write that down.
Probably the
FHA is always 0.85 unless they're putting down a huge.
0.085 or is it?
0.0085
Okay.
would be your calculation.
Yeah. They're starting to make a comeback. I got one on one of my listings. So for this particular example, we're going to, and then we take the loan amount times 0.007 or 0.0085. You're going to divide that by 12. Why are we dividing it by 12? Because it's a monthly payment. So we got to figure that out. What that comes out to is $101.85. Okay. Everything else stays the same on that portion. If you'll notice, I already pointed out that the down payment has changed to 5,400. Everything in this column pretty much stays the same. No changes. You're not going to see any drastic changes here. Underwriting or document prep fee may go up a little bit. Would that be safe to say? Or
Not necessarily. Are you doing the upfront MI or no?
no? We're just keeping it simple.
Okay.
You know, the KISS method.
I got you.
So the one other line that you have to change, it's the only other line that you have to change or add to is the MIP or VA funding fee, because you got to pay this in advance or get this started in the prepaids. So the way we were going to figure this out, let me find my notes here. Okay. This is in your explanation, but you want to write this down. If it's FHA, it's 1.75% times the loan amount. FHA is 1.75% times loan amount. If it's a VA loan, it's 2.3% times loan amount. That's for the first one being used. First one being used. Just don't even worry about it. Again, guys, keep in mind, this is just general estimates that we're trying to show the buyers. This is what the costs are going to be.
I don't really think it's fair that they ask you guys to put in some of these fees that you like really just in general wouldn't know, or it's not really up to you to calculate. It's really not fair.
I agree because there's so much that goes into convention.
And I think it
Yep.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I think to address your question, the reason that rule is there is so that there aren't fraudulent contracts and offers that are submitted that a buyer has no business of purchasing. Or they can't, or it is the fact that nobody's gone over what the cost of buying a home actually is. If you've got very rarely does this ever happen anymore, where you start working with the buyer, you automatically get out there and start showing them houses without even asking them if they've talked to a lender yet. I'll start showing a couple houses, but after that, if they still refuse to go talk to a lender, I'm done. I'm not showing any more homes until they are pre-approved or pre-qualified. You guys know the difference between pre-qual and pre-approved? Which one's more important? Which one has more teeth? Pre-approval. Pre-qual is basically the lender's kind of taking a general look at your stuff and they say, yeah, we're going to pre-qualify you up to this amount. Pre-approval is where they've actually gone in and done a little research on you. Dings your credit for checking your credit score. Is that a good way to say it?
we'll still check credit at a pre-qual. It just pre-approval means we looked at your documents too.
So in this particular case, and this is the last number that we have to calculate, since it's FHA and I just told you it's 1.75, I'm going to go in here and put in 1.75 just to fill out the form. And then, so we take the loan amount of 174,600, not the sales price, the loan amount, 174.6 times 1.75, and that gets me $3,055.50. Boom. We've just now completed an FHA deal. Those are the only changes that we had to make. Okay. Any questions on that?
So we don't have the mortgage insurance on FHA?
Yeah, that's what I just.
Well, I thought that-
No, don't worry about this one. Why was it that we said not to worry about that line?
I don't think they impound monthly mortgage insurance.
If they do, it's only one month.
And only because I'm trying to get somebody to actually work these areas who I.
That's already a worst case.
Yeah, these numbers are greatly.
Both of those were worst case. even without that.
I mean, don't get me wrong, like, I've never had a fire hydrant look at two fire hydrants. But
So that's basically wraps up the presentation. I hope you guys learned something from this. I am providing you with a one page. Now I couldn't squeeze it all in one page. It's front and back, but it is a cheat sheet of what we just went over. So basically it summarizes that explanation sheet that we just went over. All you got to do is refer to this. If you can't remember what the formula is, look at it and boom, it's right there. Okay, does that make sense? Do it and tell her, send it to her and tell her that I did it, worked it up for you. You need to. If you guys need another digital copy of this cheat sheet or the explanation, the descriptions, email me. I'd be glad to get a copy of them to you.
That's good.
You're a great instructor. Yeah.
Thank you. Did I do okay?
You did great.
Oh, I better stop the recording. There's one for you. That's just a cheat sheet of. Oh, you already got a copy of those. No, that's fine. I just wanted you guys to be able to see what I was doing. So you guys are okay with how I presented that?
Yeah, I'm getting ready to go do one because we just want to see if the guy qualifies. But I'm going to check it and see if it's post dated when I print it. Because that's what I don't know. Because
Yeah.
if it shows up without a date,
Right.
then that'll be.
Okay, for those of you on Zoom, thank you. I'm going to start the recording. And I'm going to stop video. More.